Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bad News, and I want to start by congratulating Diddy on winning the next US election. Because that's how America works, people. It's a Hollywood story, and Diddy's going to win the next one. I have a feeling he's going to come out of prison, and he's going to win it in a landslide. But at the moment, we have Trump. Daddy Trump is back, and he's on a mission. He finally gets to dismantle the deep state, as he likes to call it, as he brought it back. You know, deep state is generally a Turkish term that was brought back by Republicans around 2016. The idea being that there are some bad business actors who are secretly running the government. If you look at Trump's campaign, there have been many successful businessmen who have backed him, who stand to benefit a lot from his election. So if we're worried about a deep state, about these bad business actors putting their own interest ahead of the country, is Trump planning to dismantle the current deep state so he can just put in his own one? Or as Elon Musk called it, the Avengers? The Avengers being him, Dana White, Donald Trump. What is the definition of a deep state? The definition of a deep state is very powerful men, other than the president, coming together to benefit themselves. Isn't that what Trump is doing right now? Isn't that what we're expecting to see? Play this video for me, Viraj. This is from a year ago. This is Trump's plans.
Plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all. And corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors in our national security and intelligence apparatus, and there are plenty of them. The departments and agencies that have been weaponized will be completely overhauled so that faceless bureaucrats will never again be able to target and persecute conservatives,
Pause.
Christians.
If we read between the lines, the subtext here is he's basically coming after everyone who came after him. Is it appropriate for the US president, one of the most powerful men on the planet, to use his power to seek revenge on people who he feels came after him? I'm not sure it is, but there's going to be a lot of people out there who disagree with me, who are going to watch him exercise his power and enjoy it for whatever reason. Because they like a story more than they like democracy. Continue playing.
Or the left's political enemies, which they're doing now at a level that nobody can believe even possible. Third, we will totally reform FISA courts, which are so corrupt that the judges seemingly do not care when they are lied to in warrant applications. So many judges have seen so many applications that they know were wrong, or at least they must have known. They do nothing about it. They're
Pause.
lied to.
Again, subtext. He's coming after the system that came after him. Is that really what you want from the President of the United States? A man who just uses his power to gain more power. If you, for a second, believe this is for the benefit of you, a normal middle-class, working-class person in the United States, you might be a little bit off your rocker at the moment. This is quite clearly a man who's operating at a level that you will never see. He's coming after enemies that you will never see, not for your gain, but for his personal satisfaction. Continue playing.
Fourth, to expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption.
Pause.
And there are
tearing this country apart. The first minute and a half of this video that he was running on has been about nothing else other than division and him seeking revenge on the people who came after him. Where's the unifying speech here? Where's the president that tries to unite people rather than divide them? If we look at a chart of US polarization, this is the most polarized it's been since they've actually started recording that metric. More divided than 9/11. Possibly the most divided it's been since Civil War. And he, whether you like it or not, has been at the heart of that. Since 2016, he's campaigned on differences rather than unification. How often does he say the words the left? If we quantify Donald Trump's speech, how often does he use divisive terminology? I could probably find the research right now. We won't bother. Let's keep playing.
Plenty of them. Fifth, we will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to subvert our government and our democracy.
Pause. I'm coming after the people who accuse me of lying. Continue.
Possible, we will press criminal charges. Six,
Pause.
we will...
I'm going to press charges against anyone who ever spoke out against me if I possibly can and make it look legal. Continue.
Make every Inspector General's office independent and physically separated from the departments they oversee.
Pause. There was an Inspector General who once pissed me off. Continue.
So they do not become the protectors of the deep state. Seventh, I will ask Congress to establish an independent auditing system to continually monitor our intelligence agencies to ensure they are not spying on our citizens or running disinformation campaigns against the American people, or that they are not spying on someone's campaign.
You've been running disinformation campaigns on the American people. You've been lying, Donald. We fact check you all the time and we find out that you operate on falsehoods. So should they come after you? One of the most powerful men on the planet lying for political gain. If you think that's a cause for concern, maybe the buck should start with you, buddy. Continue.
Like they spied on my campaign.
There it is.
Eighth, we will continue the effort launched by the Trump administration to move parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy to new locations outside the Washington swamp. Just as I moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, as many as 100,000 government positions could be moved out, and I mean immediately, of Washington to places filled with patriots who love America, and they really do love America.
Pause.
Ninth,
I'm going to put jobs in places that voted for me. Anyone who didn't vote for me can go suck a lemon. Play.
Work to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs at the companies they deal with and that they regulate. So they deal with these companies and they regulate these companies, and then they want to take jobs from these companies. Doesn't work that way. Such a public display cannot go on, and it's taking place all the time, like with Big Pharma. Finally, I will push a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people.
Okay, so Donald Trump is heavily concerned about a deep state. Donald Trump is heavily concerned about left-wing politicians manipulating the public for the gain of political votes. He wants to dismantle a deep state that he claims exists. Yet he's been openly willing to use very powerful figures in his campaign who definitely will benefit from his election. Isn't that the very definition of a deep state, or am I missing something? In 2016, there was concern about an organization called Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica was using Facebook information to identify personality traits that might be used to predict people's voting behavior and then sending them targeted ads to manipulate them. Sounds bad, doesn't it? If you have an 80 million people data set and unknowingly you're using their information to send them targeted disinformation ads to manipulate their voting intentions, and that's being paid for by political companies, political parties, you'd be right to say that that's not a good idea and that should be stopped. And Elon Musk was one of these people. In 2018, he piled on when Facebook was being criticized for its usage by Cambridge Analytica, and he jokingly removed his companies from Facebook and was calling for greater inspection on these issues. This was in 2018 when this happened. Cambridge Analytica is now closed. We got basically GDPR because of this, or an enhancement of GDPR at the very least, pushing for GDPR. There was massive fines for Facebook companies. I think Facebook as a whole got fined like 5 billion or something insane. And it was taken seriously, as it should. Because if a tech company is swaying an election with the massive data set that it has, that might be a cause for concern. And Elon pointed this out in 2018. Let's look at Elon Musk now. So we wrote Elon Musk, vote Trump. Let's just scroll slowly, Viraj, down. This is the amount of times Elon pushed for Donald Trump to be elected. Vote. Vote. Speed up a little bit, Viraj. More vote. More vote. More vote. More vote. More vote. It was relentless. Pause it there. If we rightfully point out that tech giants shouldn't be able to use their massive data sets and their power to try and sway an election, and Elon Musk, before he bought X, formerly known as Twitter, pointed this out himself, what are we doing here? What do we make of one of the most powerful men on the planet, in the tech world and financially, campaigning vigorously? One of the most followed, if not the most followed person on X, I believe. Campaigning vigorously, who has access to the algorithms for a political leader. And quantifiably spreading disinformation on his campaign and not having it taken down because he runs the company. Conveniently, the company isn't on the stock market, it's a private company. It's convenient, isn't it, Raj?
He did spend 44 billion to do it, but yeah.
Helps though, right?
It does.
Because you won't be held accountable for the same kind of laws.
Agreed.
If you care about freedom of speech and you care about fair elections, Elon, you're a very intelligent man. Do you not think that your position as one of the most powerful men on the planet, access to one of the most powerful algorithms on the planet, might sway an election? If you're so concerned about social media companies potentially swaying an election one way or the other, by pushing more content, by spreading disinformation, which we've shown you've spread over the last couple of months, where does that put you in this argument? Does it make you a hypocrite? Does it tell me that you only stand for the things that you claim to stand for when it serves you? Do we only want freedom of speech when it benefits our agenda? I'm at a loss here. Because it doesn't add up, does it? There's clear inconsistencies here. If we want to replace the so-called deep state, but Donald Trump is chummy and having his election campaign boosted by some of the most influential men in America, isn't that replacing a deep state with a new deep state? Does Elon not stand to benefit from contracts? Does Dana not stand to benefit from the civil case he's in for antitrust laws by having his friend as the president of the so-called free world? I'm not sure if those two things equate. They hate the word disinformation. They hate the word misinformation because they see it, at least on the surface level, as a challenge to freedom of speech. Or is it just a tool they use to dismiss arguments that oppose their narrative and a tool that they use to push their own? Freedom of speech is absolutely important. Censorship throughout history has been dangerous. But political disinformation has clear consequences, overwhelming consequences. Go to the document we prepared, Viraj. We've prepared a document here of different incidents where political disinformation has led to the highest possible negative outcome, which we've defined as fatal violence. The crisis in Myanmar. Disinformation tactics. Myanmar military and political authorities spread disinformation on social media, particularly Facebook, portraying the Muslim minority as violent extremists and invaders threatening national stability. The false narratives were used to incite anger, suspicion, and xenophobia towards the Rohingya community. Fatal consequences. The disinformation helped gain the public support for military operations, which escalated into what the UN has called a genocide. The 2021 US Capitol attack. Scroll down, Viraj, please. In January 6, a large crowd stormed the US Capitol to disrupt certification of the election, resulting in violent clashes with police. 5 people died. Who tweeted about that, Viraj? Who told people to fight that day? Was it Trump? It was Trump, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Let's go to 3. Mob lynchings in India. In India, false rumors spreading through WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp actually decreased the number of times you could forward a message because of this. You were there when this happened. About child abductions by certain minority groups or individuals allegedly engaged in harmful activities. These messages often included doctored images and fabricated stories. The consequences in response to these disinformation-fueled rumors, mobs lynched dozens of people across India, often targeting vulnerable or minority individuals who were falsely accused. Anti-just propaganda in Rwandan genocide, fatal consequences. The disinformation campaign directly contributed to the 1994 genocide, another genocide. Ethnic violence in Ethiopia, fatal consequences. The disinformation played a role in sparking and intensifying violence across Ethiopia. The ongoing Tigray conflict in particular has led to thousands of deaths. Christchurch mosque attacks in 2019. Inspired by these conspiracy theories, the attacker killed 51 people. Mob lynchings due to blasphemy accusations in Pakistan. Let's just fire through these. Anti-immigrant disinformation in Europe led to attacks. That's 9. So if the highest possible negative outcome that we can sum up is people dying, can we really say with a straight face that disinformation has no consequences? And at what point does freedom of speech, or this concept of freedom of speech, violate people's freedom in general? Words matter. Freedom of speech matters, but words matter. Words have consequences. When you're one of the most powerful people on the planet, what you say goes a long way. Can spark a lot of hatred, a lot of disillusionment, and a lot of blind loyalty to a cause. I'm always concerned when I see people in the streets screaming and crying for a political leader. A political leader shouldn't be adored. They should be held to a very high standard of accountability. They should be constantly under the microscope and judged to the highest of standards. But we live in a world where Donald Trump lies and they are seen as lies for a greater good by his supporters. He might be a liar, but he's my liar. It's one of my favorite quotes. He's lying to get our agenda across because the left lie as well. And yes, they do. Statistics show they don't lie to the same rate as your boy lies. And the consequences are clear. So to summarize this, we live in a world where Donald Trump wants to crack down on a deep state. But we also live in a world where Elon Musk is on Twitter, X, click on the next one please, Viraj, campaigning like his life depends on it to get Trump into the position of President of the United States. And if we're concerned about a deep state, rich, powerful men, other than the president, using their influence to get what they want out of a country, this might give some inclination of a new deep state, if that's what you're truly concerned about. We have inconsistency in messages. People who claim to be concerned about social media companies meddling in elections, but then we have one of the same tech giant using his influence, his quote-unquote freedom of speech, and his access to a very powerful algorithm to help get his guy on board. And we also live in a world where people who sing the praises of freedom of speech, and freedom of speech is important, seem to lack any consideration for the consequences of disinformation, the extreme of freedom of speech. When people are spreading falsehoods. You can have a nuanced conversation about freedom of speech and still acknowledge the consequences of when people abuse their right to freedom of speech. And that's today's episode. That's the message for today. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for coming to Bad News. See you next week.